Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Enchi ball python. And even if you're brand new into ball pythons, I'd say you've probably heard of Enchi. It's one of the most popular genes on the market today. As a matter of fact, it came out in 2002. It's been around pretty much since the beginning of the ball python craze. And essentially what it does is it reduces the pattern of just about any morph that you mix it with. So for example, Bobby here around my neck is a bamboo. If you actually mixed in Enchi, what it would do is it would take this pattern and it would reduce it to a smaller version, kind of a smaller, thinner version of the pattern. And a lot of times Enchi actually enhances some of the yellows and the oranges in a lot of combos. And sometimes even as a standalone morph, you can see Enchi is kind of yellow or orange. But I'd say there's quite a few lines of Enchi. We really don't distinguish between the lines. Some of them are a little brighter orange, some of them are not as bright. Some of them have a really huge effect when it comes to reducing the patterns. And some of them, it's almost hard to tell that Enchi is in the mix. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to bring you over to the internet and I'm going to show you the potential of the Enchi gene. Alright, so I'm going to start over here on the world of ball pythons, and this is what an Enchi looks like. Essentially it looks almost like a normal ball python, except the pattern is really reduced. And you can see in this example, it looks really yellow. As a matter of fact, most of the times I don't really see Enchis as yellow as this one. This almost looks like a pastel. It's pretty amazing. And if you actually scroll through some of these pictures, some of them are definitely not yellow or orange. And it seems like it really depends on the certain line as far as how much yellow or orange you can see in the Enchi, and actually how much pattern reduction you see. And I actually brought up a snake over here. This is from Morph Market, and this is, when I think of Enchi, this is what I think of. I think of a reduction almost to where it gives you almost like a banded look across the snake. And you can actually pick up Enchis really, really cheap. This one actually sold for $40. And then, of course, anything you buy over here on Morph Market, you have $50 shipping on top of it. So you're looking at about $90 just to jump in the project. But, you know, if you're actually looking just for base genes and you pick up a lot of snakes, you might be able to actually ship a lot of snakes together at the same time and save on the shipping. That's another strategy for getting some really cheap snakes if you're actually adding multiple snakes. So actually it's a codominant morph. You can breed two Enchis together and get a super Enchi. And the super Enchi, I would say the pattern is a lot more reduced. Sometimes you can see a lot more of the yellows and the oranges coming out in the super Enchi. And as a matter of fact, you look at this one and it is super reduced. You can see the super Enchi really reduces the pattern a lot. You mix it with the super Enchi with a lot of genes, and sometimes it almost completely wipes out the pattern altogether. And here is a super Enchi I found over on Morph Market, just a straight super Enchi. This one, as a matter of fact, this one is 50% het ghost. And I'm thinking it's probably 100% het ghost just based on the color. Sometimes one copy of the recessive ghost gene really brings out some of the color in the snakes. But when I think of super Enchi, this is what I think of. I think of a super reduced, almost like a striped or banded. It's not like this in all cases, but I would say in pretty much the ideal case, this is what a really nice super Enchi looks like. So I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the base morphs and show you how well they work with the Enchi gene. So this is the leopard. The leopard, I would say, is pretty much the king of combos, works really well with almost everything. I don't have leopard in my collection. I'm thinking maybe next year of picking up some kind of a leopard combo to bring it into my collection. This is what happens when you mix leopard with the Enchi. You can definitely see the pattern is reduced quite a bit. And on this one, you really can't see a lot of the yellow or orange coming out, because you know in the leopard you see a little bit already coming out. You can see, like in this snake, you see it's a little bit oranger, and I would say usually when you mix in Enchi, you see a little more brightness, a little more contrast, and you definitely see a pattern reduction. So here's the spot nose. The spot nose works really well with quite a few combos. It's pretty much known for some of the really impressive clown combos. Works really well with clown. This is what happens when you mix spot nose with the Enchi. And this is kind of interesting. You actually see a lot of the color coming out as well as the pattern reduction. And you also see a lot of the contrast and intensity increase when you mix it with the spot nose. So it really depends on which genes you're looking at. You can tell this one is definitely like a classic Enchi look with the banded pattern going all the way down the snake. So the clown's kind of interesting because if you actually mix clown with Enchi, you get a huge dramatic effect. Let me show you what that snake looks like. This is an Enchi clown. And the funny thing about Enchi clown is there's actually another gene called blade. And the funny thing is, when I first started in ball pythons, people were talking about blade clowns, and I always thought the blade clown was a pattern reduced clown by the nature of the clown. And then later on, I actually found out that people were actually separating the blade from the clown. So also now you have this like a normal looking snake that is a blade with no clown or no head clown in the mix. And it's for me, it was kind of nerve-wracking because to me, it almost seems like the blade is another line of Enchi that originated from the clown. And I know a lot of people would disagree that actually blade is a completely separate gene, but in my opinion, I think blade might be another line of Enchi that actually was separated from the clown. And you can see that it has a really huge effect, really increases the brightness and the contrast, really reduces the pattern. It works really well when you're mixing Enchi with clown. Here's the pied. It works really uniquely with pied when you mix in Enchi. The funny thing is there's always some exceptions to the rule, and usually when you're mixing pied with anything else, normally you'll get like a 50-50 white. Some snakes are normally, you mix pied in, and it's kind of a variety of high white versus low white, and it's kind of an unexpected, I'd say. A lot of snakes are actually 50-50, and then sometimes just by random chance, you can actually get a really high white pied like this one right here, and you mix other genes in, like for example if you made a spider pied, spider pieds always look like this because they push all the color to the head. But if you're just breeding pied with a pied, there's a probability that you can actually get a really high white pied like this with no spider in it. And this is what happens when you mix pied with Enchi. Take a look at this. This is kind of a unique anomaly, just the opposite of a spider pied. It always makes a low white pied. So every time you make a pied, you have Enchi in the mix. You hardly see any white at all in the snake. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting because you basically, with the pied and the Enchi, you always have this jumbled up pattern. So a lot of people will mix pied and Enchi. You get a really low white pied, but you get all this crazy pattern. And then you start layering stuff on top and you get a really wild pattern. Sometimes it can be really bright and contrasty, mixing Enchi and pied and then some other genes on top. So this is the fire. I said the fire is kind of an interesting morph. As a matter of fact, if you breed two fires together, you get a super fire, which is an all-white snake with black eyes, not to be confused with snakes in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, all-white snakes with blue eyes. I actually produced my first fires this year. They are really impressive snakes. You mix fire with Enchi, and you can definitely tell the pattern is being reduced, and you also see some of the yellow and oranges coming out in most cases with the fire. It works really well when you mix Enchi with fire. Here's the Mojave. Mojave's also in the blue-eyed leucistic, probably one of the early morphs that's, you know, almost in everybody's collection. There's a lot of Mojaves in the ball python industry. Mojave is another blue-eyed leucistic. You can make all white snakes with blue eyes. This is what happens when you mix the Mojave with the Enchi. You actually see a slight pattern reduction, but a lot of it, you can actually see the brightness and the contrast coming out on the snake. It makes for a really impressive combo. Works really well when you mix Enchi with Mojave. The albino is kind of interesting because the albino is a recessive mutation, and essentially what it is it's a color, it just affects the color of the snake and the color of the eyes. You always get red eyes with an albino, and it almost looks like, as a matter of fact, if you change the color of the snake, it would almost look like a normal. Sometimes you can see the alien heads coming in here. So when you add Enchi on top of the mix, it actually, what happens is you reduce the pattern on the albino, and you get almost a banded albino. It's pretty awesome. I really like how these two genes work together. The Pinstripe, this is one of my favorite morphs. As a matter of fact, it's an all gold snake. It's probably as gold as you can get in any kind of a snake. The hatchlings are really bright gold. I love the Pinstripe. I have quite a few Pinstripes in my collection here. You mix Pinstripe with Enchi, and you can see it really reduces the pattern. Pretty much keeps the same color, and essentially all it does is it reduces the pattern on the Pinstripe down to these little tiny spots. As a matter of fact, if you work certain genes into the mix, where I've actually seen the Pinstripes really super bright, you mix Enchi on there and it almost turns these like little bright spots into little bright dots on the back of the snake. In some combos, mixing Enchi in is just really fantastic with the Pinstripe. This is the banana. Actually, it's a codominant morph. You breed two bananas together, you get the super banana. The interesting thing about the bananas and the coral glows is they're male makers and female makers. So you actually breed it. I actually have a male maker banana. I actually have a male maker coral glow. I've bred it quite a few times, and every single coral glow that comes out of that thing is always a male every single time. I've yet to produce a female. And somehow the males and the females are linked with the bananas and the coral glows. And essentially the banana and the coral glow is the same thing, just two different lines of the same snake discovered by two separate people pretty much at the same time. You mix banana with Enchi, and the funny thing is you can actually see some alien heads usually in the bananas and coral glows. You mix it together and it reduces the pattern. But the thing I found really interesting with Enchi is you actually see these little white spots up on top of the snake. Sometimes it actually, as the snake ages, you can actually see these little white highlights up on the top of the snake. I thought that was pretty interesting. So this is the Axanthic. The Axanthic is recessive mutations, pretty much takes out all the color. You end up with a black and white and silver snake. You mix that with the Enchi, and you can definitely tell there is a pattern reduction, not really that much of an effect on the color of the snake. Here's the lesser. The lesser is also in the blue-eyed leucistic, and I actually have a couple lessers, really awesome snakes. As a matter of fact, I made a lesser scaleless head this year, and for some reason the scaleless head really increases the brightness and the contrast on that snake. I'm gonna have to show you that lesser. The lesser scaleless head that I have is really getting bigger, and it's really super bright. It's unbelievable. You mix the lesser with the Enchi, and this is what you get. You actually get a pattern reduction, plus it seems like you get an enhancement of the color and the contrast. It works really well with Enchi. Here's the champagne. I say the champagne is kind of another anomaly when it comes to Enchi. Usually when you breed a champagne to another morph, the champagne is just so visually dominant. Essentially what you're left with is almost a patternless snake in most cases that's just a shade of a different color. Pretty much looks like a champagne of just a different color. You mix it with Enchi. This is really interesting that the Enchi actually brings out a lot of pattern on the Enchi. And I was scrolling through these pictures, and I just couldn't believe the difference between a regular champagne and the champagne Enchi. So if you're into the champagne project, let me tell you, you definitely want to add Enchi to your champagne to bring out some of the pattern. This is really wild. As a matter of fact, I was wondering if this was just kind of a fluke over here on the World of Ball Pythons. So I actually came over here to Morph Market, and I was looking at the champagne Enchis, and it looks like almost every single one has a lot of pattern. It is really quite impressive. Looks like it's pretty much across the board bringing out all the pattern in the champagne. So let me tell you, if you have champagne, you definitely want to add Enchi to the mix. Here's the Calico, and actually I have quite a few Calicos in my collection. I made some bamboo Calicos last year that were just absolutely stunning. You mix Calico with Enchi, and take a look at this. This is one of the craziest combos. Really reduces it, brings up the white, and increases the pattern and the contrast. I'd say Enchi works really well with Calico. Here's Yellow Belly, and Yellow Belly is one of those subtle morphs. I'd say Yellow Belly is probably one of the hidden gems when it comes to the ball python industry. Yellow Belly mixed with almost anything enhances it. Similar to Enchi, I'd say Yellow Belly is kind of pretty much the thing you definitely want to add to pretty much all your combos to make them look a lot more impressive. The funny thing with Yellow Belly is it almost looks like a normal snake. It's really hard to tell the difference between Yellow Belly and normals. You mix it with Enchi, and take a look at this. You can definitely see there's a pattern and reduction and an enhancement of the color when you mix the two together. It makes for a pretty impressive combination. So this is the Orange Dream. The Orange Dream is actually kind of another one of those sleeper genes, kind of like the Yellow Belly. You mix it with the certain combos, and I'd say the Orange Dream has the greatest potential to make some really impressive, almost fluorescent snakes compared to all the other combos. You mix the Orange Dream with the Enchi, and you can see definitely the Enchi's really bringing out a lot of the intensity of the single gene Orange Dream. And I'd say where the Orange Dream really shines is when you get the Super Orange Dream, especially if you get the high intensity line. It is pretty amazing. So I was actually coming over here to Morph Market, and just out of curiosity, I sorted by all the snakes that have sold and that are for sale that have the Enchi gene. And believe it or not, there's 10,589 Enchis. As a matter of fact, if you look just at all the snakes that have always been, pretty much have been over here since the beginning, there's like 100,000 ball pythons on Morph Market. And you sort by Enchi, and that's like 1 out of 10 ball pythons actually have Enchi in the mix. I thought that was pretty incredible. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And PZ Reptiles asks, can I add French subtitles to my YouTube videos? And that is actually a very good question. I was actually trying to figure out how to add subtitles to my videos in multiple languages, and it doesn't seem like there's really any easy way to actually do it. As a matter of fact, they add subtitles automatically in English now, and it's essentially what I do is I upload the video, and then after it's uploaded for so long, it actually automatically takes what I'm saying and converts it to text, and then sometimes the text isn't always right. If you actually hit the little subtitles button underneath the videos, you can actually see the subtitles. You don't actually have to listen to me like if you're in a crowded restaurant or something. You want to watch my video, you want to turn it down and just see the subtitles. You can actually hit the subtitles and see it in English. But I'm pretty sure if I convert it to French, I'll have to actually go through, take the English subtitles, convert them to French, add another language, and I think you can actually do it, but I think you have to manually translate it yourself, or I think you can get it professionally translated to where someone will actually do it, but you actually have to pay a fee. And I'm really not to that point where I can actually afford to go through and translate my videos into multiple languages, although it would be a pretty interesting project. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.